And now, ladies and gentlemen, the star of our show, direct from the bar,
PB.
Settle down. What is going on out there, peeps? So many of you, I don't know, something lit a fire under your butt today, but like a handful of you said, whatever happened to our American Wealth Fund? And I said, well, Jim Records, he actually explained it really good. And he said, Pimpy, could you show us again? I said, sure, I can do it. I'd be more than happy to play the interview that he did, explaining the Wealth Fund and how it is that we inherited this money, this vast amount of money. Thanks to Trump, a lot of changes have taken place. Can we benefit from it? I don't know. After you listen to Jim and what he's saying, it's very possible. So let's keep an eye on this and see if we can benefit from this wealth fund, shall we? Before we get started, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. Real quick, let's get us updated on cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin's at $119,000 per token. Look at Ethereum. Finally, it's about damn time. $4,295.87 per token. XRP is at $3.15. Solana is at $175.73. Dogecoin is at 22 cents. Cardano is at 78 cents. Chainlink's at $21.87. Gold is at $3,403.90 now per ounce. That's really good. Silver is at $37.92 per ounce. Let's go ahead and get into this report from Jim Records.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's briefing. My name is Aaron Gensler, Vice President of Research here at Paradigm Press, one of the country's largest independent financial research firms. We are broadcasting to you today from just outside of Washington, D.C., with what could be one of the most important financial revelations in our nation's history. Because the United States Supreme Court just quietly handed down a massive ruling, a ruling that could trigger the release of what one expert is calling a long-hidden national wealth fund, a national asset that's been kept off limits to the American people since the 1860s. And according to official estimates, it's currently worth $150 trillion. If you were to divide that figure by the number of households in America, that would be enough to make every single one a millionaire. Yes, you heard that correctly. Saying this ruling is a legal breakthrough is an understatement. This decision, backed directly by President Trump and his legal advisors, has dismantled a 163-year-old legal firewall put in place to keep this national asset out of your hands. We're talking about a resource so massive, so deeply buried in land law and federal code, that even most members of Congress didn't know it existed. According to documents reviewed by our team and confirmed by a former source from the Pentagon and U.S. intelligence community, to be worth $150 trillion. The importance of this for the American people cannot be overstated. So, what exactly is this asset? Why was it hidden for over a century? And what happens now that the door to it has finally been opened? Those are the questions we set out to answer. And earlier this week, I sat down with someone who's been tracking this story for more than a decade, former White House and Pentagon advisor Jim Records. In that conversation, we covered it all. The true nature of this hidden $150 trillion reserve, the ruling that opens the door to making it public, and what steps investors can take right now to understand what this means for their financial future. That conversation was recorded just a few days ago, and what you're about to see is the full, unedited interview. No headlines, no spin, just the facts. Now do yourself a favor. Put away all distractions and watch the following presentation in full. As you're about to see, it could have an enormous impact on your financial future. For years, we've been told America is bankrupt, but there's a side to this story you've never heard before. A secret store of wealth so valuable, it's enough to turn every legal U.S. citizen into a millionaire, thanks in large part to President Trump. According to our guest today, it all started years ago, when the 42nd Congress changed Title 30 of the U.S. Code to establish what he calls a secret trust for the American people. Today, this fund has quietly grown into a massive 15-figure fortune, one that should have enriched generations of Americans. Instead, for more than a century, it was sealed off from the public. But now, thanks to a Supreme Court decision, it will soon be unlocked. Our guest today says America is anything but broke. And if you understand what's bound to happen next, you could watch your own net worth soar in the years ahead. According to Jim Rickards, former advisor to the White House and Federal Reserve, you and I are sitting on a national inheritance worth $150 trillion and counting, enough to pay off the national debt 4 times over. To put that in perspective, that's enough money to make every American family millionaires. When it's unleashed, Jim predicts as soon as this summer, it will silence Trump's most outspoken critics and hand a growing number of Americans a chance to retire wealthy. So, where did this so-called endowment come from? Why was it kept secret for more than a century? And how can you claim your share? Joining us now is our special guest, Jim Rickards. Jim has spent his 50-year career in the innermost circles of the U.S. government and banking, making him one of the most politically connected men in America. Back in the 1970s, he co-crafted the Petrodollar Accord, a single act which granted the U.S. dollar reserve currency status. In the 1980s, he helped the U.S. end the Iranian hostage crisis. In the 1990s, he was summoned by Alan Greenspan to help save America from a $1.9 trillion banking crisis. And in 2007, he testified in front of the U.S. Treasury, warning of a looming financial crisis, supplying them with a detailed plan to avoid disaster. Jim, it's an honor to have you with us.
Glad to be with you.
Now, moments before we went on air, you told me we're about to see a profound transfer of wealth, yet very few people seem to be talking about this.
Right. And there's a good reason for that. This trust fund is not a pile of money to be equally distributed to all citizens, and it's not part of a government program or handout.
It's interesting. So tell me, if it's true the government is sitting on $150 trillion, how have they kept it quiet for so long? Where's it coming from? And how can the average person profit?
Sure, I can answer those questions, starting with your first. Why all the secrecy? Decades ago, the U.S. Congress inserted a key provision in Title 30 of the U.S. Code, creating what one could call a national trust fund. You can go read the sections 22 to 42 to be exact. It's pretty dry stuff. I got my law degree from the University of Pennsylvania, one of the top schools in the nation. I promise you, we never talked about this change to the U.S. Code or this trust fund even once. It's been this big secret for years. Yet, over time, the estimated size of this fund has grown and grown to the point where its raw value sits near $150 trillion and counting.
You got to forgive me, but I'm hung up on the size of this. $150 trillion? How?
It didn't start out that way. But the nature of this trust is such that politicians haven't been able to rate it, which has allowed it to grow untouched for decades.
A number this big, it's unfathomable.
I know. Just to put it into perspective, $150 trillion is enough to pay off the national debt 4 times over. It's enough to take a 100% stake in every company listed on the NASDAQ, from NVIDIA to Google to Amazon, and buy every private home in the United States. If you divide this figure by the number of households in America, each family would get a check for $1.1 million. Now, of course, I don't expect any of this is going to happen. I'm just trying to point out the sheer magnitude of the situation. This is not some kind of government program like those COVID relief checks a few years back, but it is a chance for the average American to become richer than they ever imagined, and a chance for a few little-known companies to become household names in the years ahead.
You know, for all the talk we've heard about debt ceilings and government shutdowns, I'm surprised no one has mentioned this trust fund. The only one we hear about is Social Security, but this seems totally different.
No, this is different, very different. The government has raided the Social Security Trust Fund so many times, it's practically gone. Even NPR admits it could run short of cash in just 8 years. But this national trust is different. If Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Obama, or Biden tapped into it, they would have unleashed a socialist nightmare that destroyed this country. As luck would have it, they failed for one specific reason, which I'll share in a moment. The key thing to know is, for the first time in our lives, the government is set to unlock this massive asset. And it all ties to a pivotal decision made by Trump's Supreme Court.
I've got to say that this sounds great on paper, but I have so many questions.
Well, I thought you might. Take your time.
Well, assuming everything you said is true, why would the government release something that's so valuable?
Well, as it turns out, this has happened before. Back in 1862, America was a young nation, and it needed people to populate the western states. That's when President Lincoln signed the Homestead Act, instantly granting any American citizen the right to claim 160 acres of public land for just $18.
160 acres for $18? That's got to be the deal of the century.
Well, for many it was. Their $18 investment equates to around $562 today. while 160 acres of farmland is worth about $900,000.
So these people had a chance to make 1,000 times their money?
Indeed. But there was a catch. To get all this free land, they had to pack up, move to the middle of nowhere, and stay put.
Well, of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
No. And to be clear, this story is not about real estate. You see, despite giving away 10% of all the land in the United States, the government retained the most valuable part. For 163 years, it's held on to it. But thanks to a recent Supreme Court decision, it will soon release this vast $150 trillion asset. And just like we saw with those 160 acres of farmland, it's not the government that will profit. It's the investors that act on this opportunity.
And who may that be?
Well, I'm talking about the businesses who get a jump on this, and the regular folks who know how to take advantage. They could come out way ahead. Only in this case, you don't have to uproot your family or endure months of backbreaking labor. You don't even have to write your congressman or fill out a form. With a small investment, you could set your family up for generational wealth.
All that sounds incredible, but there's a hole in this story. What is this national endowment, and where's the money coming from? Far as I know, the government isn't cutting million-dollar checks or giving away land.
Well, you're right. President Trump is freeing up something far more valuable than land on a scale we've never seen before.
But before we get to that, I'm wondering, where on earth could the federal government store such a huge endowment? At the Federal Reserve?
No. The Fed manages about $6.8 trillion in assets, which is nothing compared to this. Take a look. It's held on deposit across all 50 states. $516 billion is here in the Salton Sea area of California. $3.1 trillion is held in Nome, Alaska. And $7.35 trillion is here in Midland, Texas.
$7+ trillion in Texas alone. But how do we know the government did just sell it off? You know, I was just thinking about Fort Knox. It holds 147 million ounces of U.S. gold reserves, but is it still there? The government hasn't allowed an audit since
1953. Oh, I see what you're getting at. How do we know this $150 trillion endowment still exists? Aaron, I can't vouch for the gold at Fort Knox, but this national trust is different. Unlike a stash of gold, they can't sell it off with the push of a button. That's a key reason why it has grown untouched for so long. But I believe all that's about to change, starting as early as this summer.
Now we're getting somewhere. So we're not talking about a pile of stocks, cash, bonds, real estate, gold bars.
That's right. And it's not an actual trust fund or endowment like you've seen before. It's not earmarked for any specific individual. I'm just trying to use terminology that will make the most sense to viewers. That's why very few people know about this. And here's the thing. If you're over age 50, what happens next could be your final chance to build generational wealth. That's why it's critical you know what's happening and how you can profit.
So I'm beginning to see the big picture. But if this endowment is as huge as you say, why have so few people heard about it?
It's beyond the imagination of most people, including most officials employed by the federal government. But Americans who stake even a modest claim with a small investment could see an explosion of wealth in the years ahead. There will be surprising political effects as well.
Political effects? What do you mean by that?
Well, Donald Trump could become a national hero, one of the most powerful presidents in memory. I wouldn't be surprised if his face gets chiseled into Mount Rushmore or immortalized on the new $1,000 bill.
Trump? On par with Washington, Lincoln, and Roosevelt?
Look, Aaron, I can tell from the look on your face what you're thinking.
It seems crazy, but that's why I invited you to join us. Over the past decade, we've seen dozens of off-the-wall predictions, and we've done our best to poke holes in them. But when we investigated your record, Jim, an astounding number of your predictions have proven right. Few believed you back in 2008 when you warned of a looming stock market crash. But that's precisely what happened. Stocks cratered 53%. Then in 2016, you said Trump would become our next president. At the time, polls gave him a 1 or 2% chance. But again, you were right. Then came 2020, and we all know what happened that year. But few people saw it coming, and hardly anyone listened to you when you warned of the coming pandemic and lockdowns. When it comes to President Trump, you've been flawless. You were one of the few people who knew he'd become president in 2016, and last year, you predicted he'd win in an electoral landslide, including the exact number of electoral votes he'd receive. It's uncanny. But your latest call, it's something else.
Well, I don't blame you if you think my new prediction sounds a bit crazy. No one has a reference point for this, because nothing like it has happened in more than a century. Now, this might sound like it's coming out of left field, but I promise it will all make sense in a minute. Do you remember when Trump spoke about new American cities?
I do remember him saying something like that.
Right. A year or so ago, he mentioned America could build as many as 10 new freedom cities. Trump said, these freedom cities will reopen the frontier, reignite American imagination, and give hundreds of thousands of young people and other people all hardworking families a new shot at home ownership and, in fact, the American dream. And this all ties back to our national endowment. Of course, CNN made fun of this plan, calling it light on details, and Forbes piled on too, saying there are a lot of problems with this idea. Not surprising, because these people rarely stop to think. All they do is parrot political talking points. But have you ever wondered, where did our cities come from? I'm not talking about colonial New York, Philadelphia, or D.C. Why did so many new cities spring to life during the 19th and early 20th centuries? San Francisco and Denver, Houston, Salt Lake City, and Birmingham. And why should so many people leave everyone they knew to move hundreds to thousands of miles away? It all ties back to the story I'm sharing with you today. San Francisco was a sleepy village of less than 300 people for decades. It didn't become a city until the gold rush of 1849, and tens of thousands of speculators joined the fray. Birmingham, Alabama was a quiet cotton-picking district until we discovered vast deposits of iron, coal, and copper in the 1870s. Overnight, it became known as the Magic City. Denver was sparsely populated until the late 1800s. Then it burst to life thanks to gold fever and the birth of the Transcontinental Railroad. Houston was known as Mexican Texas, but all that changed in 1901 with the discovery of the giant oil field Spindletop. An explosion of mineral wealth rained down over our nation, and anyone of modest means could stake a claim and strike it rich.
Jim, I get it. This idea of a gold rush it's embedded in our culture. But I've got to be honest. Everyone I know who's making real money, they've bought and held stocks for decades or made a fast buck trading crypto or AI stocks.
Well, you're right. We haven't seen a real mining boom in our lifetime. But the last time this happened in America, so many people cashed in, a phrase was invented to describe it: rags to riches. And now it's about to happen once again. These seemingly obscure minerals, from gold to copper and silver to lithium, they're the building blocks of everything from NVIDIA chips to advanced military weapons, to ChatGPT, to the new freedom cities Trump has proposed.
Well, when you put it that way, I guess new cities doesn't seem so crazy.
Right. And to be clear, you don't have to move anywhere to take advantage of this opportunity.
That's a relief. But there's one thing I really can't wrap my head around. Why haven't we seen any new cities spring up since the early 1900s?
Well, that's a great question with a simple answer. It takes vast amounts of wealth to build a new city, not just dollars and cents, real mineral wealth, the building blocks of life. And unfortunately, the government got in the way. For the past 50 years or so, Washington backed all kinds of crazy things, from electric cars and solar panels to offshore windmill farms, all in the hope that these technologies would save the planet. But they've been a disaster. They cost us trillions of dollars and make next to zero impact on the climate. And they made it next to impossible to tap into our vast resources here in the U.S. One former insider at the Department of Interior says, "We have all these essential materials right here under our feet. Incredibly, insanely, however, the United States is the only nation in the world that locks them up."
So all these minerals were locked up by the insane environmentalists for decades?
You probably noticed Obama and Biden chose to protect plants, birds, and fish instead of protecting and enriching the American people.
All right, I mean, I'm all for a clean environment, but what kind of person would sacrifice his family for the sake of a bird or a fish or a plant?
Look, I appreciate the unspoiled beauty of nature too, but these people are mentally ill. To protect the environment, they destroyed our middle class. They shipped our key industries overseas, then bottled up America's most valuable resources. Capital Research reports, unbelievable as it may seem, an area larger than 25 of the 27 states east of the Mississippi is no longer accessible for mineral exploration, much less mining. That's equal to every square mile of all these states combined. So all this time, we've had this rich endowment right under our feet, yet for years we refused to touch it.
You know, when you put it that way, I can't help but think of a place like Norway. For years, it's tapped into its own oil and gas fields and passed the wealth right along to its people.
Well, that's right. Norway's endowment has around $350,000 set aside for each man, woman, and child. You can find similar sovereign wealth funds in Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE. Thanks to its vast oil endowment, its citizens receive everything from interest-free mortgages to free health care to 11-cent gasoline. And believe it or not, they pay zero personal income taxes.
I kind of wish you hadn't mentioned that. That seems unfair.
Well, don't lose hope just yet. Recently, Trump established a sovereign wealth fund for America, something that has never happened before. Now, I'm not saying the government will give any of this money directly to American citizens. No one knows how they'll use this fund or what will go inside it. But there are clues. Recently, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet. Well, what could he mean by that? Well, our mineral endowment alone is worth more than $150 trillion. Contrast that with America's Social Security Fund, which is set to run out of cash by 2033, just 8 years from now.
It makes me sick to think about how badly it's been mismanaged and how Social Security has become kind of a Ponzi scheme. Will this new sovereign wealth fund help fix our broken safety net?
Well, there's no telling how he'll deploy this fund. Anything is possible. We'll just have to wait and see. But Aaron, if Social Security running out of money makes you sick, brace yourself. Because guess who profits from this mess? China. In addition to taking most of our manufacturing jobs, the U.S. government admits we rely on China for 100% of 20 key minerals. These are critical to everything from NVIDIA's AI chips to Elon Musk's EVs, robots and satellites, to advanced military weaponry like F-16 fighters and drones. Practically every device with an on button. And late last year, China cut us off.
Cut us off in what way?
China blocked the export of these critical minerals to the United States, meaning if we don't act, our whole economy could tip into crisis. This reminds me of the 1970s and the Arab oil embargo. Back then, I was working with the Nixon administration. I was part of an elite team plotting a secret takeover of Saudi Arabia's oil fields. It was our plan B if they didn't agree to our demands. Anyway, I bring this up because the same kind of thing is happening today in the market for critical minerals, which is why Trump is moving fast to unlock this $150 trillion endowment.
Well, I mean, you put it that way, it's no wonder. So, real quick, to recap, we've been sitting on a fortune, all the resources we could possibly need, and meanwhile, our leaders have acted like we're broke, borrowing and printing money to fund our government, going hat in hand to China.
Yes, but all that stops now. Recently, Trump said, there are certain areas where we have great raw earth, and we're not allowed to use it because of the environment. We have areas that have incredible resources, and I'm going to open them up. I'm going to let them use it. So today, for the first time in a century, he's reopening our mineral-rich federal lands and fast-tracking companies that will recover trillions of dollars worth of resources right here in America. You can see on this map, the shaded area. It belongs to the public. It adds up to roughly 28% of all the land in the United States. About 90% of this land is concentrated out west, and it contains world-class mineral deposits, many of which have never been touched.
Well, judging by what we've learned so far, it's about time we tapped into this national treasure. There's just one problem.
What's that?
Trump's already served a full term as president, and he failed to unlock this $150 trillion endowment. He couldn't get the Keystone Pipeline approved or greenlight Alaska's famous Pebble Mine. He didn't resurrect the coal industry or expand offshore drilling. So what's changed now?
Well, you're right. Most people don't realize Trump was sabotaged from day one. His first 2 years in office were wasted fighting the fake Russia hoax. His third year was destroyed by a fake impeachment trial concocted by the intelligence community and liars like Adam Schiff. His fourth year was consumed by the COVID pandemic and the collapse of both the stock market and the economy.
So he never had a chance to do things his way.
Right, but this time is different. Recently, his Supreme Court made a pivotal decision. I don't want to get into the weeds, but for decades there's been a law in the books, the Chevron doctrine. But it's clear to me its purpose was to prevent businesses from operating in America. Have you ever wondered what happened to our shipbuilding industry, our consumer electronics industry, clothing and furniture makers? America used to be a bustling economy full of hardworking, innovative businesses, but most of them disappeared, thanks to a web of insane rules and regulations.
Right, and most of them outsourced their labor to China.
And why does everything seem to be made in China? If you've ever wondered why it's so cheap to make a product way over there and ship it thousands of miles back here, this is it. They don't have all this red tape. For the past 50 years, fake experts have strangled us from within the government. They tied us down with reams of regulation, and they ushered in one boondoggle after another, like the Green New Scam. So they hollowed out our economy, and we wound up with toilets that can't flush, gas cans that don't work, shower heads that barely spit water, and annoying paper straws that disintegrate in your mouth. And these same boneheaded policies, they gave agencies like the EPA kill shot power to stop any mining project they wanted at any time for any reason. Look, recently S&P Global put together a list of the top mining countries on Earth based on how long it takes to tap a major deposit. And guess where the United States ranks?
Well, we're the richest nation in the world, so somewhere near the top?
No, we came in second last, one notch above poverty-stricken Zambia.
You've got to be kidding.
Well, think about this. When it comes to extracting rare and priceless minerals, our country is slightly better than one of the poorest nations on Earth. We have truly massive mineral wealth here. It's not hard to extract. We know where it is and how to get it. but the government got in the way.
That's brutal.
You have no idea. There's a huge copper deposit in Arizona. It's called Resolution Mine, and it's been sitting there for 29 years. It's got enough copper to supply 25% of what we need right here in America. Then there's the infamous Pebble Mine in Alaska. It's one of the greatest sources of mineral wealth ever discovered. It has been mothballed since 1990. Or how about this? The Thacker Pass lithium mine in Nevada is the largest known deposit of its kind in the United States. Guess how long it's been stuck? Waiting for U.S. government approval.
25, 30 years?
It's been shut down since 1978.
That's insane.
It's beyond crazy. It's criminal. They have deprived us of our birthright, but now that's all about to change.
And so what has changed exactly?
Last year, Trump's Supreme Court overturned the Chevron doctrine. Most people have never heard of this policy. Like I said, it essentially gave so-called government experts kill-shot power. And they used it again and again to block us from touching dozens of world-class resource deposits across the country. But that's all over now. We know exactly where these minerals are. We know they're worth trillions of dollars. Now, for the first time in half a century, we can go get them. Not only is the Chevron doctrine dead, but its vast power now lies with the Trump administration, its courts and judges.
Okay, so this is the huge land rush you're talking about, and perhaps the core of Trump's new sovereign wealth fund. But Jim, to my knowledge, the United States government cannot extract these minerals.
Well, of course not. These are public lands, but to unleash all this mineral wealth, the government is turning to investors. In fact, Trump is rolling out the red carpet as we speak.
This is a post from Truth Social. Quote, any person or company investing $1 billion or more in the United States of America will receive fully expedited approvals and permits, including, but in no way limited to, all environmental approvals. Get ready to rock. $1 billion or more.
But look, you don't have to be a billionaire or a millionaire to profit from this opportunity. I found a backdoor way to profit from mineral rights tied to the most valuable untapped deposits in America. In fact, you could get started with $500 or less.
Mineral rights as an investment?
That's right. Recently, Trump's Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, said, we're going to rename the Department of the Interior the Department of Land and Mineral Rights. Why is that? Because for the first time in our lifetime, the government is going to monetize America's real physical wealth, not just our gold reserves, but all our federal lands and along with the priceless metals and resources hidden under the surface. And if my research proves correct, investors who tap into this opportunity right now could become wealthier than they ever imagined. No one alive has seen anything like this before. I project we will see 50 years of untapped mineral wealth unleashed in a single presidential term. For investors, it's a chance to cram decades worth of gains into just 4 years.
I can see what you're saying, but can anyone get in on this? The whole idea of owning mineral rights, it sounds complicated.
Right, well, not to worry. I'm not talking about doing anything complicated like directly owning the rights. You don't have to be rich or an accredited investor. It's as simple as owning shares of a few specific stocks. In fact, there are 5 ticker symbols you can type into any brokerage account that will give you a stake in 5 companies I believe will skyrocket in the years ahead, each with the potential to double, triple, or more during Trump's second term, conservatively speaking.
And what makes their mineral rights so valuable?
Sure. Let's pretend you own the rights to a huge copper deposit. Copper, by the way, is one of the most critical metals used in the production of AI chips by companies like NVIDIA. All right, so you're sitting on a $50 billion copper deposit. How much are your rights worth?
No idea.
Well, it depends. During the Biden administration, you had to deal with all kinds of roadblocks and red tape.
In other words, my copper was off limits.
That's right.
Okay, in that case, my mineral rights could be worth less.
Much less. Pennies on the dollar. But soon the same mineral rights could be worth a fortune. And this is not hypothetical. This is precisely what happened with a company called First Quantum. Back in the early 2000s, the Zambian government approved his Kanganshi copper mine, and his shares exploded from 84 cents to more than $22. That's a gain of 2,583%.
That's an incredible return.
Keep in mind, it took place over 5 years. But this just goes to show what's possible when the feds get out of the way. I could show you dozens of examples. Take Northern Dynasty. Back in 2002, the government allowed it to acquire a 100% stake in Alaska's vast Pebble project. In the span of 5 years, its shares leapt from 50 cents to almost $15.
What's that, 3,000% or more? You don't see that very often.
Well, in rare moments like this, anything is possible. There's a firm called Paladin. It's a uranium miner with a massive property in Namibia. Same story. At one point, you could have bought shares for less than 15 cents adjusted for splits. But when the government approved this mine, it raced to $92, roughly 61,000% higher in 4 years.
Okay, 1 second. I think if I have the math right, that's enough to turn a $500 stake into $300,000.
Now you're getting it. This is what makes today's situation so unusual and potentially profitable. It just goes to show what's possible. It's rare to see an opportunity like this, but just think of it. For decades, the U.S. government has blocked us from tapping into our birthright, trillions of dollars of minerals and metals right here on American soil. But today, for the first time in half a century, Trump is shredding the government's crazy rules and regulations. His massive 10-to-1 deregulation initiative is sure to clear the way for miners and drillers to finally access our untapped resources. His Supreme Court has reversed a decades-long ban, and he's issued multiple executive orders to unlock our vast energy resources and establish America's first sovereign wealth fund.